Hi guys, hello. I hope the audio is coming fine. Yeah, thank you guys for joining. Let me know if the audio is coming fine. If volume increase needs to happen. No, I think volume is fine. Yeah. So, hi Rishabh. Dada Ankit Shah ko invite karoge. I really want to, but the problem is I don't know when my power will go off. Suddenly my internet might go off, or suddenly a music project might come up. That's why I'm not able to do any podcast with any people I really want to actually talk to. So that's not going to change anytime soon unless I move away from this particular place. Let's see someday. So today, Diana X paper. This is from 1981. I guess I don't know if, I think she built on top of this paper when she finally released her book called The Sacred Geography, which I've heard from some places. I've heard some people say that she delayed the publication or release of that book, I think at around 2013 or 2014, because she thought that book might end up helping a fascist Hindu party. That's the weirdness of academics, but their academic research is of course pretty good, unless it's full of the biases that are paid for by USA. Most research that happens in the world is in line with America's foreign policy, but some stand out, some are outliers. One of those people are Diana and her research about India being forever a sacred geography. So, and it's not really that Diana has been the only one to talk about this. Radha Kumud Mukherjee, Jadunath Sarkar, mainly Radha Kumud Mukherjee, to a large extent even R.C. Majumdar. All the three Bengali historians have spoken about this. That the commie argument that India was born in 1947, or there was no conceptualization of India as a state before 1947. All that's absolute crap. India has always been a sacred geography, and the boundaries of that state has more or less been defined by its sacred places. So that topic was, I think, first started by this paper in 1981. Let's see what this says. She's a very famous and credentialed historian. India's Tirthas, crossings in sacred geography. One of the oldest strands of the Hindu tradition is what one might call the locative strand of Hindu piety, so based on locations. Its traditions of ritual and reverence are linked primarily to place, to hilltops and rock outcroppings, to the headwaters and confluences of rivers, to the pools and groves of the forests, and to the boundaries of towns and villages. In this locative form of religiousness, so the religiosity is absolutely central in the locations themselves. Hence, a sacred geography, a sacred motherland, this land being holy. The place itself is the primary locus of devotion, and its traditions of ritual and pilgrimage are usually much older than any of the particular myths and deities which attach to it. In the wider Hindu tradition, these places, particularly those associated with waters, are often called Tirthas. And pilgrimage to these Tirthas is one of the oldest and still one of the most prominent features of Indian religious life. A Tirtha is a crossing place, a ford, where one may cross over to the far shore of a river or to the far shore of the worlds of heaven. Hence, Tirtha has come to refer to these places of pilgrimage where the crossing might be safely made. This is a study of the meanings of the word Tirtha in its Vedic and Sanskrit usages, and the elaboration of the notion of Tirtha in the locative ritual traditions of Hinduism. The river and the crossing. The river is an ancient and complex cultural symbol in India. India's oldest civilization was a river culture on the Indus, and in the hymns of the invading Aryans as well, this particular river called the Sindhu is highly praised. She is one of the 7 mother rivers, a group which has changed through the time to include such rivers as the Ganga and the Narmada, but which in Vedic times referred to the Sindhu, the Saraswati, and the 5 rivers of the Punjab, all in the northwest, crossing the great rivers of India, especially in their season of full flood, has long been a challenge to travelers who have sought out the fords with their ferries and rafts to make a safe crossing. Samsara, the The ceaseless flow of birth and death and birth again was likened to a river. Just like a river, the cycles of birth and death go on. And the far shore became an apt and powerful symbol of the goal of the spiritual traveler as well. The indistinct horizon of sure ground on the far side of the flood, beyond the treacherous currents. The Vedic imagination produced two great images of crossing the river flood. First, since the universe is fundamentally three-storied, with the heavens above, the atmosphere in the middle, and the earth below, one crosses over the earth to heaven, or in the case of the gods, from heaven to earth. The atmosphere or antariksha, extending as far up as the blue extends, is often described as a vast river of space to be forded in the communication between heaven and earth. The second image is related. India's rivers are seen as originating in heaven and flowing vertically from the lake of divine waters in heaven, down through the atmosphere and out upon the face of the earth. In the Rigvedic myth, Indra slays the serpent Vritra, who had coiled around the heavens and locked the waters inside and frees the heavenly waters to fall to earth. As your ally in this friendship, Soma, Indra for man made the waters flow. He slew the serpent and sent forth the 7 rivers. He opened as it were the holes that were blocked, and hence the land of 7 rivers. This flow of life-giving waters which links heaven and earth becomes a means for crossing. For by those waterfall rivers one may cross the earth to the far shore of heaven. The Ganga, for instance, is sometimes called Swargasopana Sarini, the flowing ladder to heaven. Since crossing to the far shore may be a crossing up as well as a crossing river, both the image of the ladder, Sopana, and that of the bridge, Setu, are utilized in the symbolic vocabulary of transcendence, because you're leaving this place and transcending above all this. However, the term that is most elaborately developed in the language of the crossing is Tirtha. The word Tirtha is from the Sanskrit verb Tra and Tariti, meaning to cross over. Tra Tariti. The noun Tirtha means a ford as well as any watering or bathing place. It sometimes means a path or passage more generally. The root verb Tra includes subsidiary meanings: to master, to surmount, to fulfill, to be saved, trata, okay, as well as its primary meaning, to cross. The noun Taraka, also derived from Tra, means a boat or ferry, Taran Karna, as well as a pilot or savior. Tirtha, with its many associations, is a word of passage. It refers not to the goal but to the way, the path one travels. The word is especially interesting for developing a comparative vocabulary of passage because it belongs to a whole family of Indo-European cognates, which are the great words of passage and pilgrimage in the West. Through dirge and trans as prepositions, and all of the many passage words related to them, which in English alone include thoroughfare, transition, transform, transport, and transcend. In India today, the word Tirtha is associated primarily with these crossing places, which are places of pilgrimage and which bring the traditions of the gods and goddesses, heroes, heroines, and sages to living embodiment in India's geography. Even the most famous Tirthas, which attract pilgrims across linguistic, sectarian, and regional boundaries, number in the hundreds. In addition, there are the countless local and regional Tirthas visited regularly by pilgrims from their immediate areas. No place is too small to be counted a Tirtha by its local visitors. In a sense, each temple is a Tirtha, especially consecrated as a crossing place between heaven and earth. This is the most important line. No place is too small to be counted as a Tirtha by its local visitors. So, each temple is a Tirtha consecrated as a crossing place between heaven and earth. The phenomenon of pilgrimage to such charged places was firmly grounded in the ancient locative folk traditions of the Yakshas and Nagas. Only later do we find Brahmanical traditions of pilgrimage to these places, that is, in the time of the Mahabharata and the subsequent era of the early Puranas. and only then does the word Tirtha come to refer explicitly to these places of pilgrimage. By that time, however, the word complex, Tirtha, Tariti, already had a considerable history, uncovering some of the contours of the use of these words in Vedic and Upanishadic sources through a kind of archaeology of the word, linguistic archaeology, will enable us to see more accurately the force this notion of Tirtha brings with it when it comes to popular use as a place of pilgrimage in the epics, Puranas, and Dharmashastras. The place of the crossing, the noun Tirtha. From the various usages of the noun Tirtha in the Vedic Samhitas, Brahmanas, and Upanishads, one can outline the variety of things it did mean as well as get a clear sense of what it did not mean. It did not mean, for example, a place of pilgrimage. Yeah, exactly what we had found out from reading the Brahma Purana, primary source. That But it did have associations with purity and ritual which helped to shape the understanding of Tirtha in later times. Oh, no. In Brahma Purana, we had learned that Tirthas, pilgrimage places are called Kshetras. So, Tirtha Kshetra. On constellation of Tirtha, one constellation of Tirtha meanings is related directly to the river. It is a crossing place and conversely, a landing place on the river bank. It is associated with good waters for drinking and for bathing. It is a Tirtha of good drinking water for which one hymnist entreats the Ashwins, the twin gods of the dawn, quote, make a Tirtha, lords of splendor for good drinking, end quote. Elsewhere, the hymnist praising Indra says that the sacrifice awaits him, meaning the yagya, sacrifice meaning yagya here, quote, as pleasure at the Tirtha invites one who is thirsty. In the same way, Indra is being invited. In the Vedic literature, the good waters of the Tirtha are charged with the nourishing and purifying power which came later to be associated with the river Ganga. After all, the 7 rivers released from heaven by Indra are identified with Soma, the nourishing, intoxicating drinks of the gods. The ritual plant Soma, when it is pressed through the woolen filter, falls into the wooden collecting vat below. Falling, it is called Soma Pavamana, the purifying Soma, which is praised in a great number of hymns in the 9th book of the Rig Veda. The pressed Soma flowing into the wooden vat is likened to the swift flowing Sindhu, running both with water and with milk. This homology of falling Soma, falling rivers, and falling milk is well known. In some hymns, it is not the divine rivers but the mother cows yielding divine milk who are released from the heavenly pen by Indra. Like milk and like Soma, Tirtha waters are called strength and sap. In one hymn, the Soma itself is said to flow with purity to the famed Tirtha, quote unquote famed Tirtha. The shared symbolic structure of the Tirtha waters and the poured Soma, both share this same symbolic structure. The Tirtha waters and the poured Soma is seen again, for example, in Rig Veda 10.31.3, where the Soma is poured and friends come to the wonderful drink as to a Tirtha. So friends come to drink that Soma just like they gather in a Tirtha. In sum, the heavenly streams which fall to become the rivers of the earth. Heavenly streams which fall to become the rivers of the earth are, in the Vedic imagination, the streams of Soma, pressed through the filter of heaven. Soma pressed through the filter of heaven are the rivers. The later myth of the descent of the river Ganga clearly repeats this imaginative structure, and the Ganga too is said to flow with milk and with Amrita, the nectar of immortality. In addition to being a place of good drinking, the Tirtha was apparently a place of bathing as well. For example, in the Taittiriya Samhita, the priest of the Soma sacrifice is said to bathe in a Tirtha. Quote, the Angirasas going to the world of heaven placed in the waters consecration and penance. What did they place in the water? Consecration and penance. He, the priest of the Soma sacrifice, bathes in the waters. Verily visible, he secures consecration and penance. He bathes at a Tirtha, for at a Tirtha did they place consecration and penance. Pran Pratishtha and Prayaschitta, I guess. Let's see if the translations are given below. No. He bathes at a Tirtha, verily he becomes a Tirtha for his fellows. Yeah, this we had learned in Brahma Puran. He sips water, verily he becomes pure within. End quote. Here, bathing in the Tirtha is an act of penance and purification in preparation for ritual. This becomes a familiar theme in the later Tirtha tradition. Especially interesting in this passage is the fact that the one who is thus purified becomes a Tirtha for others. The person himself becomes Tirtha because he has gone to a Tirtha. Here, as in the emerging Jaina tradition as well, the word Tirtha is used not only of a place but also of a person who may become a crossing for others. A second group of Tirtha meanings emphasizes the nature of the Tirtha as limans, the threshold betwixt and between, which links this world and the other. The liminal nature of the Tirtha is, so it's a transition spot. The liminal nature of the Tirtha is made clear in one hymn which compares time, Samaya's thresholds, the twin twilights of dawn and dusk with Tirthas. When it is asked, when is the best time of the Agnihotra fire offering? Quote, at the twilight should he offer. Night and day are the flood that takes all. The two twilights are thus the Tirthas of it. Just as a man may cross Taret, the flood by the two Tirthas, so it is that he should offer at the twilight, offer the Agnihotra. In the Shatpat Brahman, the introductory and concluding rites of the year-long Soma sacrifice are called its Tirthas. The steps by which one enters the quote-unquote ocean of the ritual at its outset and leaves it again at its conclusion. Okay. So, in the Shatpat Brahman, the introductory and concluding rites of the year-long Soma sacrifice are called its Tirthas. The steps by which... Okay, so here the Tirthas are steps by which one enters the ocean of the ritual at the beginning and then leaves that Tirtha again at the end of that ritual. In another hymn, the devout singer invites the Ashwins to mount the chariot which stands at the heavenly Tirtha on the shore of the lake of Soma, and he asks the Ashwins to cross over to this shore on a boat made of his own hymns. Boat made of hymns. In sum, it is clear that the Tirtha is not only a riverside bathing and watering place but a place where one launches out on the journey between heaven and earth. It is a threshold of time or space or ritual. Finally, it is not surprising to find a cluster of Tirtha usages in the early tradition which have to do with the Vedic sacrifice itself. After all, the purpose of the sacrifice was, in part, to bring about the communication, the linking of this world and the other. In this context, the Tirtha is a path which both the priests and the gods take to the Uttaravedi altar for the drinking of Soma. It is called the Apanana Path and the Tirtha of the gods. Uttaravedi altar. Who here hath proclaimed the Apanana Tirtha? Having approached the sacrifice by this Tirtha, they obtained all desires. Verily, thus also the sacrificer by the Tirtha, having approached the sacrifice, obtains all desires. Verily, thus also the sacrificer by this Tirtha, having approached the sacrifice, obtains all desires. Structurally, one might view the entire sacrifice as a Tirtha, as a crossing place where all the elements of this world are brought together in symbolic microcosm for the vertical crossing of the sacrificer to heaven. The sacrifice is not directly called a Tirtha in Vedic literature, but it is clear that the symbolic syntax of the later Tirtha, as well as that of the later temple, share the sacrificial paradigm. The intensification and condensation of the constituents of this world in a powerful center from which this world might be transcended and linked with the worlds of heaven. That is Tirtha and temple. The act of crossing, the verb tarati. Now let me check some comments. Shantu Pan ke khub baje fashiyeche, yes. What did the judiciary say? I don't know. Supreme Court said anything? God Tank is saying Sandesh Khali Horror and TMC women leader statements on them are vile. Yes. How are fellow women defending rapists? What has happened to Bengal? No, there are two sets of arguments. One set is saying that uh, the kind of the anti-right, anti-BJP people, so people on the left or on the Congress or Trinamool side, Congress is saying that they are very much opposed to Trinamool, but the people who are so vehemently opposed to BJP that they are not going to go anywhere near BJP and probably will end up voting for Trinamool, those people are saying that yes, whatever happened, this is bad, but the same things happen in Manipur. Bilkis Bano was let out. So how is BJP any better from this? So that's their argument. And the second argument is that nothing even happened. Proof nahi mila hai abhi tak. Tab tak we are reserving judgment. That's their argument. The act of crossing, the verb tarati. The meaning of the noun tirtha in the literature. The meaning of the noun tirtha in the literature under consideration is enhanced by looking at the uses of its verbal root tarati, to cross. In a few cases, the verb takes its subsidiary meanings: to conquer, to subdue, to surpass. For example, Indra subdues Vritra. The falcon surpasses the wind. Or Soma overtakes adversities. Occasionally, the verb means crossing in a mundane sense, as in Shatpat Brahman, where the Brahmanas did not cross the Sadanira river. However, a great number of the usages of Tarati in the Samhitas and Brahmanas and virtually all of its usages in the Upanishads have to do with crossing in a ritual or a spiritual sense. First, in the ritual context, this verb of passage is aptly associated with the sacrifice and its crossings both hither and yon, from earth to heaven, or in the case of gods, from heaven to earth. Soma, for instance, is entreated to come bringing cows, wealth and progeny, to come from the waters, the plants and the pounding boards, to cross over Tara, all trouble, and to Tara, and to sit upon the sacrificial strew. In the Aitareya Brahman, the wind Vayu is said to cross Tarati, the whole universe, like a runner carrying the offering to the gods. Elsewhere, the hymns of the sacrifice are called the two ships which carry the sacrifice to the other shore. The hymns themselves, the hymns of the sacrifice, are the two ships which carry the sacrifice to the other shore. By them, the sacrificers cross over, or taranti, they cross over the year just as one crosses a river. Wow. Similarly, another poet wishes to ascend by means of his hymns to the heavenly ocean, where the sun tethers his horses. Aha. May we cross over Tuturiyama safely with this hymn, he asks. The gods are the ones who most frequently make the crossing from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven. Both Soma and Agni descend and ascend, manifesting their divine presence in both heaven and earth. Soma, the milk of heaven, in present on earth, in present on the earth, in the milk of rivers and in the sap of plants. Soma. Agni, the fire of heaven, descends to earth in the sacrificial fire. Ushas, the dawn, Ushas, okay. The dawn at the threshold of night and day is also a crosser by nature, reaching out daily with the rays of her sun, of her own radiance, crossing the waters and touching the hills. Likewise, Surya, the sun, is called the bridge, Setu, since his rays span the sea of space between heaven and earth. Rudra, who more than any other becomes the lord of the Tirthas in the later tradition, is also one who crosses back and forth, as is seen in this passage from Taittiriya Samhita. Homage to him of the ford, Tirthyaya, and to him of the bank. Homage to him beyond and to him on the side. Homage to him who crosseth over, Prataranaya, and to him who crosseth back, Uttaranaya. Homage to him of the crossing, Ataryaya, and to him of the ocean. See, every time these salutations happen, it's always to multiple entities, multiple people, multiple things. That is why polytheism sort of acceptance, coexistence comes naturally to us. These sorts of salutations have been drilled into us for thousands of years. It's a culture of acceptance, hence. ও হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ ওটা তো অভয় আগরওয়াল ইজ সেইং উচ্চতম বিচারালয় তো ইটস নট দ্য সেম ওটা তো কয়েকদিন আগেই হয়েছে Shell Sharma is saying you'll thank me after reading it, I bet. Reading what, Shell? Did you send something? I think you sent a link and therefore it has not come here. I can't see any other comment by you. Okay. The dynamics of these divine crossings of the gods from heaven to earth are elaborated in the post-Vedic era in the notion of avatara, the divine descents. What's the post-Vedic era now? The word is formed, post-Vedic meaning Puranic era, I guess. The word is formed from the root tra plus the prefix avatra. To cross forward, to cross downward, Savitra. To cross downward. The descents of Vishnu, for instance, are well known. Vishnu coming down. We shall return below to the significance of the interplay between avatara and tirtha. In the Upanishads, the verb tra is used almost exclusively to refer to the spiritual crossing from the realm of birth and death to immortality, from ignorance to knowledge, from darkness to light. This usage is not without precedent in the earlier Vedic literature, however, where occasionally crossing over means leaving behind this world of trouble, old age, leaving behind this world of trouble, old age and death. In Rig Veda, for example, the poet opens with a prayer that the benedictions of the gods may come near and that by these benedictions we may cross over, taranto, all our troubles. Similarly, Rig Veda 10.27.21 speaks of those who cross beyond, taranto, cross beyond this realm of old age to a place of glory where there is no sorrow. The Taittiriya Brahmana speaks of the purified man who crosses over sins and prays that we, purified by that man, may likewise cross beyond sins, tarema. Elsewhere in the same text, the sacrificer prays that he may cross beyond death, tarami. So all T and R. You'll have to post the link in the comment section after the video is done, or post it in any of my community posts. Okay. The act of crossing in the Upanishads is a spiritual transition. The act of crossing in the Upanishads is a spiritual transition and transformation from this world to what is called the world of Brahman, the world illumined by the light of knowledge. It is a crossing which must be made with the aid of a guide, a guru, and by means of the knowledge he imparts. The Prashna Upanishad 6.8, for instance, ends with the students' praise of their guru, Pippalada. You truly are our father, you who lead us across to the shore beyond ignorance, Paramparam Tarayasi. In the Isha Upanishad, a person passing over or tirtha, passing over death, gains immortality, Amritam, by virtue of knowledge. In the Mundaka Upanishad, sorrow and sin are crossed over to reach immortality. The knower of Brahman, it is said, becomes Brahman. He crosses over sorrow, tarati. He crosses over sin, tarati. He liberated from the knots of the heart, he becomes immortal. The near shore left behind is characterized by the distinctions of good and evil, birth and death, hunger and thirst, day and night, the dualities, dvandvas of the dualities, dondo. The Bengali pronunciation is dondo, dvandvas, the dualities of samsara, সংসারের দ্বন্দ্ব, day and night. The near shore left behind is characterized by the distinctions of good and evil, birth and death, hunger and thirst, day and night, which are the dualities of samsara. The far shore, or para, isn't this supposed to be para? Para is without these dualities. In the Katha Upanishad, Nachiketas, in his conversation with death, describes the world of heaven as a place where one rejoices, having crossed beyond tirtha. Having crossed beyond both old age and death, and the word used again is tirtha. Both old age and death, hunger and thirst. Death teaches the deepest meaning of the fire sacrifice to Nachiketas and explains that whoever kindles the triple fire and performs the three acts, Shankara indicates that the three are sacrifice, study, and almsgiving. Sacrifice, study, meaning yajna, study, alms giving. Performs the three acts. They, who does these three things, crosses over, or Tarati, crosses over birth and death. Later on in Katha 3.2, this Nachiketa's fire is called the bridge or Setu for those who sacrifice, and is described as the highest imperishable Brahma for those who seek to cross over to the fearless farther shore. To the fearless farther shore. Titir Shatam. This sense of crossing beyond the distinctions of this world is also found in Sanat Kumara's teaching to Narada in the Chandogya Upanishad 8.4. The teacher proposes the image of the Atman as the bridge, Setu. The teacher proposes the image of the Atman as the bridge or Setu which separates the worlds. Quote, over that bridge there cross neither day or night, Tarata, nor old age, nor death, nor sorrow, nor well-doing, nor evil-doing. All evils turn back therefrom, for that Brahma world is freed from evil. Therefore, verily upon crossing the Tirtha, that bridge, the night appears even as the day. Therefore, verily upon crossing or Tirtha, crossing over that bridge, the night appears even as the day. For that Brahman world is ever illumined, therefore that night also seems like day. Here the Tirtha, the crossing place or the bridge, is the Atman itself. Like a bridge, it both separates and joins the near shore of dualities and the far shore in which those distinctions do not exist. It is the means for the crossing and the crossings in an interior one. The language of interior crossing is also used in the context of interior or yogic disciplines. For instance, in the Kaushitaki Brahmana 11.4, the means of crossing is the breath and the holy mantra called the Pranava Om. Breath, quote, breath is immortality. Thus, by immortality, he passes by death. Just as one steps over a pit by means of a beam or a roller, so with the Pranava, he steps over. The Pranava is holy power. Verily, thus, with the holy power, he continues the holy power. And interestingly so, the recent brilliant song by Rishabh Shetty, the Kannadiga composer of Kantara, he did the compositions for a recent Kannada movie called Mangalavara or Mangalavaram. There, a fantastic song is called O Pranave. So, does that mean a loved one or just someone as important as the breath? Or does Pranava mean a little something different in Kannada? Verily, thus, with the holy power, he continues the holy power. In 14.2 of the same text, we find, quote, therefore, without drawing in breath, should he pass over. Breath is immortality. Thus, by immortality, he crosses Tarati. He crosses death. Similarly, in the Maitri Upanishad, the crossing is that of the yogin who ascends by means of the breath and the syllable Om through the channel of the subtle physiology called Shushumna Nadi. After having first caused, quote, after having first caused to stand still, the breath that has been restrained, then having crossed Tirtha beyond the limited, with the unlimited, one may at last have union in the head. Yeah, it has been fun reading about these things in Sri Vigyan Bhairav Tantra. The Upanishad goes on in 6.22 to compare the yogic ascent with that of a spider ascending by means of his own thread to free space. Finally, in 6.28, the yogin having slain the doorkeeper called egoism and, quote, having crossed over with the raft of the syllable Om to the other side of the space in the heart, end quote, enters the hall of Brahman. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the one who is united with Brahman is described as in a dreamless sleep, lucid dreaming, as in a dreamless sleep, where the categories of this shore are left behind. There it is said, the father is not a father, the thief is not a thief, the ascetic is not an ascetic. Quote, he is not followed by good, he is not followed by evil. For then he has passed beyond all sorrows of the heart. Tirno. The one who knows the Atman as not this, crosses beyond Turati, crosses beyond Tarati, the world of duality. Okay, the one who knows the Atman as not this, neti neti. Uh, Finally, I understood the meaning of neti neti. Okay, I literally knew the meaning of, I knew the translation of the word neti neti, but I was not exactly getting the concept. The one who knows the Atman as not this and not this crosses beyond Tarati, the world of duality. It would take us too far afield here to explore the ways in which these words of passage, Tirtha and Tarati, have been used in the Jain and Buddhist traditions. However, even a cursory survey of their early literature confirms that these terms were used to express excuse me, express profound spiritual transition. Excuse me. Although the earliest Jaina literature refers to the enlightened teacher as Jina, a victor, before long he became known as a Tirthakara or Tirthankara, a ford maker, who has crossed the stream and reached the far shore. I was thinking about this. This reminds me that in the as Hinduism becomes more and more a mainstream, cool, aspirational model sort of a culture in India, I think it's time that car manufacturers really name some good-looking cars with Sanskrit concepts and Sanskrit names. We've had enough of these Greek and Latin names. Let's make a name let's name a car called Tirthakara or Tirthankara. Okay, because it's a Ford maker. Maybe Ford can make a car called Tirthakara. But there are so many great words to be used for a car. Okay, all the words that we have for vehicle or chariots, etc. Use all those words and name fantastic looking cars for them. That will be such a Indic vibe to that car. They will sell immediately. In the early Buddhist literature, the term Tirthankara, having been claimed by the Jainas, is assiduously avoided as a synonym for Tathagata. Okay, so the Buddhists avoided using the word Tirthankara because the word was used by Jainas. Excuse me. So they stuck to the word Tathagata. Indeed, the term Tirthankara was so thoroughly identified with the Jaina sages that it most commonly means heretic in the Buddhist context. Holy sh! For Buddhists, the word Tirthankara means a heretic. Lol. So, you see, language is so much intricately connected with different faith systems. Nevertheless, the Buddhists, without utilizing the term Tirtha, developed and enriched the spiritual image of the far shore as the goal, and the language of the crossing as the way of spiritual life. The Buddhist use of Tarati has verbs of passage closely as verbs of passage closely corresponds to the way in which these words are used in the Upanishads. The following few examples could be multiplied 100-fold from the early Buddhist literature. Quote, "When thou hast learned the best Dhamma, then thou shalt cross Taresi, this stream. Give up what is before, give up what is behind, give up what is in the middle, when thou goest, Taresi, when thou goest to the other shore of existence. If thy mind is altogether free, thou wilt not again enter into birth and decay. And he is a wise and accomplished man in this world, having abandoned this cleaving to reiterate existence. He is without desire, free from longing, he has crossed over birth and old age, so I say. Crossing in the sacred geography of India." Now the next subchapter begins, and now I'll check some comments. Did you watch yesterday Ankit Shah talk on Anvikshit? No, I have started watching that. I've watched about 5 minutes. Mangalavaram is Telugu. Oh, that's not a Kannada movie. I see. Oh, Uday Bhaskar joined the book discussion club. Thank you for joining. Next is, did you get get that 300 thing Ankit Shah was talking about yesterday? No, what 300 thing? Basava will be a badass name, yes. We should have Sanskrit brand names and company names. What 300 thing? What I'm most looking forward to as a sort of a cultural, a political, state-wise governmental embrace of Indic traditions, just like renaming a lot of things and uh, using the Sengol as a cultural symbol. Even the Prime Minister going to the Ram Mandir. I'm really waiting for the words doctor, PhD, these things to go away. Uh, Hinduism is a Hindu culture, civilization is a living, breathing civilization, and we need words like Guru, Acharya, Upadhyayas for different levels of college professors. Assistant professor का एक नाम होगा, tenured professor का एक नाम होगा, PhD complete होने से एक नाम होगा, या फिर पोस्ट डॉक कंप्लीट होने से शायद एक नाम, पंडित, गुरु, these words need to be brought in. And for PhD at least, I think genues need to be given out. And that also breaks so many myths about Brahmins being bad people. If Brahmins, if Brahminism is about seeking knowledge, then PhDs need to be given out sacred threads, and they are sacred. And it doesn't have to be just for philosophy, etc. Engineers need to be given out. Mathematicians need to be given out genues, because that's what people like Aryabhatta and Kanada, etc. they were all doing. Shushruta, etc. Crossings, and that breaks so many myths that वो आध्यात्मिकता हमारा है, science तुम्हारा है, that all those barriers get broken. That yes, it's all part of the civilization, Hindu civilization. Inside that we will use all our cultural symbols to do exactly what they were doing, and in the same ways they were doing. Anand Sridhar, hi. Crossing in the crossings, okay, we are discussing crossings basically. So crossings in the sacred geography of India. In the later Upanishads, the epics and the Puranas, the word Tirtha comes to common use as a spiritual ford, which is the destination of pilgrims, whose Tirtha tours or Tirtha yatras come to increasing prominence in the religious life of the emerging Hindu tradition. It is important to remember that the term comes to be used as a pilgrim Tirtha in a context in which the symbolic language of the river, the ford, the crossing, and the far shore had already been developed and elaborated with great subtlety and richness. Although the Tirtha traditions of the rising classical Hindu tradition built upon the ancient sacrificial vocabulary or yagya vocabulary or crossing back and forth between heaven and earth, and the Upanishadic wisdom vocabulary of crossing to the far shore, the many specific Tirthas of India's vast sacred geography are also well grounded in yet another tradition, the non-Vedic tradition of indigenous India, which, despite its many areas of obscurity, was most clearly a tradition of life force deities associated with particular places. It was a locative tradition in which Jinai Lokai, under a variety of names, Yakshas, Nagas, Ganas, Matrikas, were associated with groves and pools, hillocks, hillocks and villages wielding power for good or ill within their areas of jurisdiction. Many of the deepest roots of India's traditions of puja and Tirtha Yatra are here in this place-oriented cultus. Although the myths associated with these places have changed, layering one upon the other through the centuries, pilgrims have continued to come with their vows and petitions, seeking the sight, darshana, and the token material blessings, prasada, of the deity of the place. Whether it is Mathura or Varanasi, Puri or Tirupati, the ancient roots of today's great Tirthas are in the cultus of the Jinai Lokai, who reigned long before their places came to be called Tirthas and long before their influence began to be co-opted by the emergence of Shiva, Vishnu, Krishna, and the goddess. Let us now turn to the consideration of these Tirthas of the earth, which have inherited both the ritual and wisdom traditions of ancient Vedic India, as well as the locative traditions of her indigenous piety. The array of India's Tirthas is impressive. In this context, since we are seeking to understand the general notion of Tirtha, we can but sketch in outline some of the landscape of India's Tirthas. The great rivers of India come first to mind as Tirtha waters: Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, Narmada, and countless others. So you see here, she used the word co-opted by emergence of Shiva, Vishnu, etc. Okay, the pre-Vedic, non-Vedic goddesses and traditions co-opted. Now, I don't know if she meant this as a criticism, but obviously she is not. She doesn't hate Hinduism all that much because she has popularized this concept of sacred geography. But it still seems like, at least this paper is from 1981, at least in 2024, this does sound like a criticism, an unfair and harsh one. I think the better word would be the accommodative nature of the Vedic civilization, or the amalgamation. So because they, back then in 81, everyone believed in Aryan invasion theory, no? So she's speaking from that perspective. Or she might be of the opinion that, yeah, they were co-opted, but it is what it is. They were co-opted at some point, but it still ended up being this nice thing. In this context, since we are seeking to understand the general notion of Tirtha, we can but sketch in outline some of the landscape of India's Tirthas. The great rivers of India come first to mind as Tirtha waters: Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, Narmada, and countless others. On their banks are some of the greatest of India's sacred crossings: Prayag, Varanasi, Kashi on the Ganga, Amarkantaka and Trayambaka at the headwaters of the Narmada and Godavari respectively, and Srirangam on an island in the Kaveri, to name but a few. And as we know that they were on the banks of rivers not just because they were sacred, and not just because the rivers themselves were sacred, but also because they operated as banks. People loaned gold from them, went off to do merchant things, came back and returned the gold with interest. Some of these are fords in a literal sense, yeah, because they are rivers. Varanasi, for instance, has been located for over 2,500 years at that ford where the ancient east-west road across North India crossed the river Ganga. So closely associated is the Tirtha with pure running river waters that in South India the word Tirtha has come to mean sacred waters. Okay. Among mountain Tirthas, the Himalayas are supreme, and their high sanctuaries such as Badrinath, Kedarnath, and Amarnath are sought by countless pilgrims during the summer months when they are accessible. Other mountains are Tirthas as well, such as the Vindhyas of central India, or the isolated hilltops of Rajasthan crowned with temples of local goddesses, or the 7 hills of Sri Venkateshwara in Andhra Pradesh. Along the seacoast are such Tirthas as Puri in the east, Chidambaram and Rameshwaram in the south, and Dwarka and the Somnath in the west. The circumambulation of the land of Bharata includes these seacoast Tirthas. Forests too have been places of crossing and transition. They are places of testing and trial for travelers, and since they contain the retreats and hermitages of sages, they are also places of learning and education. Yeah. Both of India's great epics involve their heroes and heroines in periods of forest exile, and the adventures of the Pandavas or of Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana are recalled in forest tirthas throughout India. Most famous perhaps in the Naimisharanya in North India, where sages recited the ancient tales to be recorded in the epics and Puranas, Brahma Purana, which we have read a lot, read a large portion at least. We have not finished it. And incidentally, in Naimisha forest, in Naimisharanya in UP, we don't know if this is the same exact Naimisha forest of the yesteryears. I don't think there's any reason to not think that it isn't the same. That is where even Gumnami Baba Netaji hid for a few years. Among city tirthas, the cycle of the 7 moksha-giving cities is acclaimed: Ayodhya, the ancient capital of Lord Rama; Mathura, the old Buddhist and Jaina sanctuary and the birthplace of Lord Krishna; Hardwar, where the Ganga enters the plains of India from the mountains; Varanasi or Kashi, the eternal city of Lord Shiva on the Ganga; Kanchi, Varanasi or Kashi, the eternal city of Lord Shiva on the Ganga; Kanchi, the Vaishnava and Shaiva city of Tamil Nadu; Ujjain, the site of the great linga of Mahakala in central India, also known as Avanti; and Dwarka, the capital of Lord Krishna in western India. Finally, in addition to rivers and mountains, seacoasts, forests, and cities, there are the countless cycles of sites special to various sectarian groups. Oh my god. I got a dust allergy all of a sudden because of my mic. The 51 Tantric and Shakta Pithas or benches of the goddesses, the 12 Shaiva Jyotirlingas or lingas of light, the several great cultic centers of Krishna, and the beloved places of the Sri Vaishnavas. The whole of India's sacred geography, with its many tirthas, those inherent in its natural landscape and those sanctified by the deeds of gods and the footsteps of heroes, is a living geography. As such, it has been central for the shaping of an Indian sense of regional and national unity. Here, this legit mainstream academic debunks all commie propaganda. The recognition of India as sacred landscape, woven together north and south, east and west by the paths of pilgrims. Remember this page, guys, page 15 of her 1981 paper. The recognition of India as sacred and as sacred landscape, woven together north and south, east and west by the paths of pilgrims, has created a powerful sense of India as Bharat Mata, Mother India. Pilgrims have circumambulated the whole of India, visiting hundreds of tirthas along the way, bringing water from the Ganga in the north to sprinkle the linga at Rameshwaram in the far south, and returning north with sands from Rameshwaram to deposit in the riverbed of the Ganga. In the thousands of particular tales which attach to tirthas everywhere and which are recounted in the Mahatmyas and Sthala Puranas of each place, one finds repeatedly the theme of the appearance of the divine, whether as Shiva, Vishnu, Krishna, or the goddess. Excuse me. Often in its Mahatmya, a local tirtha will subscribe to the larger all India tradition by linking its sanctity to the great events of the epics and Puranas. Yeah, that is the accommodative nature of India's faith system, the cosmology of Hinduism. This might be seen as the geographical equivalent of Sanskritization, and that is a good thing. The forest sojourn of the Pandavas or the adventures of Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana are especially suited to this kind of local subscription, as is the myth of the dismemberment of Sati. In this way, countless local tirthas claim their part in a larger tradition. And in each case, the stories told recount not a generalized sense of divine presence at the tirtha, but a very particular sense of the circumstances, the crises, the places, and the person involved in the appearance of the deity there. So it's all very detailed, elaborate description that why your place is important and why you are part of this larger pantheon. Every tirtha's tale is of hierophany, the residence of heaven breaking in upon the earth. Here, the tirtha is clearly the counterpart of the avatara. The avatara crosses downward, opening the doorways of the divine in this world so that these thresholds might be crossed in the other direction by humans. The place of avatara is the tirtha. From there, the crossing might be readily and safely made. For instance, because the Ganga descended in its avatarana, it becomes a means of ascending as a tirtha. Imagine the possibilities of a science fiction movie with these concepts. Not just Ramayana, Mahabharata renditions with great VFX, etc., but original, fresh, newly written science fiction stories with these exact concepts. Fresh new characters who believe in these gods, but use these temples for other things like building an actual rocket and launching to the space, etc., or as a portal, because that's kind of what's being discussed here. These are wormholes. For instance, because the Ganga descended in its avatarana, it becomes a means of ascending as a tirtha. Here, the tirtha is clearly the counterpart of avatara. The avatara crosses downward, opening the doorways of the divine in this world so that these thresholds might be crossed in other directions by humans. The place of avatara is the tirtha, for there the crossing might be readily and safely made. For instance, because the Ganga descended in its avatarana, it becomes a means of ascending as a tirtha. Although the particularities of tirthas, their myths and legends, their special times and powers, their special attributes are of great significance for those who visit them. Their structural similarities as crossings are more significant for us in the context of this study. In what ways do these tirthas of the earth function as crossings or fords? First, the Tirtha Mahatmyas frequently claim that the Tirtha is a good place for the performing of rites, since it is a place of powerful and direct communication between this world and the other. The, the acts one does and the prayers one utters at a Tirtha are many times more beneficial and swift of fruition than they would be elsewhere. Prayers one utters at a Tirtha are many times more beneficial and swift of fruition than they would be elsewhere. In part, of course, it is because the Tirtha, reached only after a long journey, is difficult of access, durlabha, and its rewards are multiplied. For instance, the site Darshana of Amarnath, high in the Kashmir Himalayas, is enhanced by the sheer effort of the long trek, an effort which is rightly compared with the tapas of the ascetic. In part, however, it is the power of the place itself which is transforming. Ordinary acts of worship, puja, almsgiving, dana, and listening to the ancient lore, Shravana, are charged by the extraordinary power of the place and its deity. So significant is this power that it is sometimes claimed that the place transforms even the inadvertent visitor. On the whole, the rites performed at the Tirtha do not differ from those performed at home. It is the journey and the place itself which makes the ordinary extraordinary. A few places, however, are known for distinctive rites. Especially important are those tirthas famous for Pitra Tarpana and Shraddha rites for the dead. Although such rites may be performed at many tirthas, the North Indian group called Tristhali, Prayag, Kashi and Gaya is famous for these rites. It is because the tirtha is a good ford between this world and that of heaven, or between this world and that of the Pitris, that it is the right place for ritual performances. Here the Tirtha inherits some of the ritual meanings of crossing from the era of the Vedas and Brahmanas. Second, it is affirmed that Tirthas are not only those places where rites and sacrifices well performed will yield bountiful blessings, but also that Tirthas are those places which may replace the performance of rites and sacrifices. The pilgrimage to a Tirtha, therefore, becomes a substitute for other ritual activity. Tirthas are not only those places where rites and sacrifices are performed and will yield bountiful blessings, but also Tirthas are those places which may replace the performance of rites and sacrifices. The pilgrimage to a Tirtha, therefore, becomes a substitute for other ritual activity. Okay, just visiting the place itself is a substitute. The first major Hindu treatment of Tirtha Yatra is in the Tirtha Yatra Parva of the Mahabharata, where the Pandavas, during their forest sojourn, undertake a circuit of the many Tirthas. On their pilgrimage, they visit the various Tirthas of rivers, mountains, and forests. A great number of these are described as bestowing the benefits of some particular sacrifice, such as the Ashwamedha, the Rajasuya, or the Agnihotra. In the later Dharma Shastras and Puranas, such ritual equations of Tirtha with sacrifice are common. For example, the famous Dashashwamedha Tirtha in Varanasi is a place where one bath bestows the fruit of 10 Ashwamedhas. Of course, many ritual actions in the later tradition came to be described in terms of the sacrificial equivalents, but none so predominantly and clearly as the pilgrimage to a Tirtha. Given the understanding of crossing, which both the sacrifice and the Tirtha share, this is not at all surprising. The outset of the Tirtha Yatra Parva makes the equation of sacrifice and Tirtha Yatra quite clear in a passage, which is quoted repeatedly in later centuries, both in the Puranas and in the digests of the medieval Nibandhakaras, which is, the fruits of sacrifices, completely and accurately expounded in due order by the sages in the Vedas, cannot be obtained by the poor man, O king. Sacrifices with their many implements and their many various requisites are the province of princes, or sometimes very rich men, but not of single individuals, who are deficient in means and implements and who do not have the help of others. But hear, O king, of that practice which is accessible even to the poor, equal to the holy fruits of sacrifice. This is the supreme secret of the sages, O king, which is the holy practice of pilgrimage. Tirtha Yatra excels even the sacrifice. So, when people saw that poor people who really wanted to make these sacrifices or yajna, etc., but they could not afford such sacrifices frequently, or maybe did not have the money to donate to a local temple, or didn't even have a temple nearby, but they wanted to make these, do these rites. For them, the Tirtha Yatra was invented. That even going to the place sort of substitutes your monthly or yearly expenditure of doing 100 yajnas and rites. Thus, it is not what one does in the Tirtha, what one does in the Tirtha which is transforming. It is going there and being there. The Tirtha Yatra is the rite, R-I-T-E, rite. The place is the power. In Varanasi, for instance, it is said that even sleep is yoga, and even casual conversation is the repetition of the mantra. So, then, if these places become easily accessible because of vehicles, roads, and corridors, then of course they are not going to have the same effect for you, even if you believe in all the rituals. So you see, it's more important that you donate and to local temples, to bigger temples, or do as much as these ceremonies in your home as possible. Third, pilgrimage to a Tirtha is not only less expensive than the elaborate rites of brahmanas and kings, it is also less restrictive socially. The Tirtha might be seen therefore as a place where one crosses the ordinary boundaries of caste and sex. The way of the Tirtha is open and accessible to all, particularly to Shudras, outcasts, and women who are excluded from Brahmanical rites. Tirtha Yatra was the Mahayana, the great path of the Hindu tradition. At times in the Dharmashastra digests or Nibandhas, the liminal status of the Tirtha beyond the boundaries of conventional life is emphasized. For instance, at a Tirtha, the Chandala, the Shudra, the woman, and the Brahmana all bathe in the same waters. Wow. At the Tirtha, the usual restrictions of touching and not touching are left behind. Although in practice the egalitarianism one finds in the text has not invariably been upheld, it remains the ideal of the Dharmashastra tradition. In considering Dharmashastric and Puranic statements about the accessibility of Tirthas, to the lower and poor classes, it is important to remember that to a large extent, pilgrimage originally was the tradition of these same lower classes. They certainly did not wait till pilgrimage was proclaimed the equivalent of sacrifice before taking to the roads to seek out the groves, hills, and rivers of their locative vision. One might more accurately say that the Brahmanical tradition adopted and brought its own interpretive framework to the phenomenon of pilgrimage which already existed. Absolutely makes sense. And that is the best part about this tradition. This ever accommodating, ever amalgamating way of thinking. This accepting approach. Shudras and very likely women as well were already veteran pilgrims. The Brahmanical treatment of Tirtha and Tirtha Yatra, however, brought the subject into the realm of Dharma, and indeed Tirtha Yatra became the single most broadly elaborated subject in the Dharmashastric and Puranic literature, as well as in the later digest literature. Fourth, it is commonly said of Tirthas that they are places for crossing beyond sins. The destruction of sins, perhaps the sins of a lifetime or of many lifetimes, is ascribed to Tirthas, great and small, calling to mind some of the Vedic and Brahmanic associations of the word Tirtha with purification. The purifying waters of a Tirtha wash away one's sins, or the very dust of the place may be purifying. Entering the boundaries of a great Tirtha, such as Varanasi, scarlet sins are said to tumble out of one's body and burn like puffs of cotton in a blazing fire. Thus, visiting the Tirtha is a kind of penance, prayashchitta, for sins. The tale of Shiva's own wandering penance is relevant here. Having sliced off the fifth head of the the slanderous Brahma, Shiva roamed throughout all the Tirthas of India, the skull of Brahma clinging to his hand until he came to Varanasi, which was powerful enough to destroy even the worst of great sins, Brahmana slaying. There the skull fell off. In sum, the power of a Tirtha to purify sins, Papa, is the commitment of its power to bestow measureless blessings, Punya. In India, where the pure or Pavitra is the closest equivalent of what we call the sacred, the purifying power of the Tirtha is very significant indeed. So pure is Pavitra. Pavitra is not exactly sacred. That is interesting. Flawless. Not a randomly assigned value, but also randomly concluded to be pure, atheistically speaking. The purifying power of the Tirtha is very significant indeed. Fifth, the journey to the Tirtha is both an interior and a geographical journey, internal journey and a geographical journey, and the crossing is in part within. That the crossing, the journey you are making, that journey has to happen internally as well, mentally. You're supposed to contemplate. The pilgrim way is modelled on the paradigm of those perpetual pilgrims of India, the ascetics and renouncers. The tradition of wandering forth and leaving behind one's attachment to the stable life of household and village is the ancient way of the Hindu sannyasins or renouncers and the Buddhist pravrajakas, those who have gone forth, quote unquote. On the move and unsettled except for the 4 months of the rainy season, these wanderers are prototypical pilgrims. In their constant visitations to the great tirthas of the tradition, they add their own luster they add their own luster to that of the place itself. They add their own luster to the luster of the place itself. The beginner lay pilgrim becomes a sannyasin of sorts, leaving the household behind and taking up the privations and hardships of the road. The rules prescribed for the pilgrim in the Puranas and the medieval digests make it clear that the pilgrim life is an ascetic and disciplined life. Going to a tirtha is not only a matter of the feet but also a matter of the heart. The Manasa Tirthas, or Tirthas of the heart, of which we have read in the Brahma Puran, are as important as the geographical Tirthas. The notion of these Tirthas of the heart is elaborated in the Mahabharata as well as in the Puranas and Nibandhas. Truth, charity and patience, self-control, celibacy and wisdom, these are the Tirthas in which one must bathe to become truly clean. If water alone were enough to purify, the notion of these Tirthas of the heart is elaborated in the Mahabharata as well as in the Puranas and Nibandhas. Truth, charity and patience, self-control, celibacy and wisdom, these are the Tirthas in which one must bathe to become truly clean. If water alone were enough to purify, then the water leeches and fishes of the Ganga would all be transported to heaven. It is by bathing in the Tirthas of the heart that one may truly cross over. The Tirthas of the earth are not to be neglected, however. Because, quote unquote, the one who always bathes in earthly Tirthas as well as in the Tirthas of the heart, Manas Tirtha, goes to the supreme goal. The notion of internal Tirthas plays a perpetual counterpoint to the vast proliferation of geographical Tirthas. The refrain of the great poem on Kashi attributed to Shankaracharya insists, "I am that Kashi whose real form is wisdom." However, the valuing of Tirthas of the heart does not replace the journey to the Tirthas of the earth. Rather, the Indian tradition balances the pilgrim's faith in sheer transforming power of the place itself with a persistent reminder that the Tirtha is an internal as well as an external crossing, and that the Tirtha to which one journeys is also close within. Finally, although most journeys to the Tirthas are related to specific vows or directed toward specific fruits, phalas, these are a few Tirthas which promise the highest goal of which the Upanishads speak, the great crossing over to the far shore of Brahman. The 7 cities mentioned above are Moksha Dayaka, bestowers of moksha. And Hindus affirm that those who die within their borders will be liberated, never to return to the shore of birth and death. Many would say that Kashi or Varanasi is the most important of these seven. Kashivasa Loka Punya Papa Shodhakam Vibhum. Niti Marga Kovidam Puratanam Jagatpatim. Kashika Puradhinata Kala Bhairavam Bhaje. Many would say that Kashi or Varanasi is the most important of these seven. In any case, it is true that Kashi is famous for death and for moksha. Yes. Niti Marga Kovidam Puratanam Jagatpatim. The greatest of Kashi's praises is Kashyam Maranam Mukti. Death in Kashi is liberation. Here we begin to glimpse the way in which India's great Tirthas inherit the wisdom traditions of crossing, which is crossing beyond birth and death, crossing from darkness to light, crossing from ignorance to knowledge. In Kashi it is said, Shiva as Guru speaks the Taraka mantra, the ferryboat mantra, into the ear of the dying. By its power one is illuminated with the light of Brahman, which is also the light of Kashi, the luminous, and ferried across to the far shore, never to return. In the Kashi Moksha Nirnaya, the city is not only the luminous crossing place on the Ganga, it is also known as the threshold between heaven and earth, and the crossing place within, called the Atman. It is said to be located where the nose and eyebrows meet. Nose and eyebrows meet. The radical spiritual crossing expressed by the use of Tra and Tarati in the Upanishads has clearly become a part of the later tradition of Tirtha and Tirtha Yatra. As Shiva exclaims in the Kashi Rahasya while showing his beloved place to Parvati, quote, "Look dear, look at Kashi, a boat set for the crossing, a motionless refuge, set just above the earth. A boat not of wood and sails, but the illuminer of all people, whom she carries across the sea of being." End quote. Now the final conclusion, the Tirtha as symbol. Traveling to the Tirthas is one of the most prominent forms of popular piety in India today. The past century of modernization has served further to stimulate pilgrim travel, enabling Indians by the millions each year to take to the pilgrim road by buses and trains. While all of India's Tirthas are no longer durlabha, which we were discussing, they are no longer difficult of access. It would be safe to say that they are more popular and in a sense more powerful than even before. As Yudhishthira once said to the wise Vidura, who had returned from a Tirtha Yatra, quote, "Devotees like you who have become Tirthas, Tirthabhuta themselves, are the ones who make the Tirthas into Tirthas. Tirthi kurvanti tirthani." By embodying the... Okay, so let's read this sentence without the brackets, okay? Devotees like you who have become Tirthas themselves are the ones who make the Tirthas into Tirthas by embodying the presence of God there. End quote. With their great numbers and the power of their cumulative devotion, India's pilgrims are continually making their Tirthas into Tirthas. Aha, what a sentence. Oh, kya line hai. With their great numbers and the power of their cumulative devotion, India's pilgrims are continually making their Tirthas into Tirthas. Oh. The significance of Tirthas in India may be understood, as I have attempted to do here, by taking account of the many strands of the Indian tradition which have converged in the Tirtha. The popular locative traditions of folk piety, the sacrificial and ritual traditions of crossing between heaven and earth, and the wisdom traditions of crossing to the far shore of the river of samsara. Since Tirthas have accumulated all these traditions, they have amalgamated all these traditions, they are sought by people with wide-ranging religious aspirations, from healing to mukti. So you see, these religious places, इसको हटा के हॉस्पिटल बनाने का आर्ग्यूमेंट तो उतना स्ट्रांग नहीं है, इसीलिए तो मतलब हॉस्पिटल का जगह है, मगर ये भी इम्पॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज व्हाट इट इज़ डूइंग, इकोनॉमिक टेम्पल इकोनॉमी तो छोड़ ही दो, ये लाइन क्या है? Since Tirthas have accumulated all these traditions, they are sought by people with wide-ranging religious aspirations, from healing to mukti. Okay, but यहाँ भी वैसे एथीस्ट तो है, minorities, उनको कितना seriously ले उसमें एक confusion है, but the atheist argument would be then People are stupid for believing in these traditions itself. So why then waste time in a place which accommodates these traditions when these traditions are themselves not important? So let's ignore that argument for now. For some, the Tirtha has long been associated primarily with boons and blessings such as health, longevity, and fertility. For others, the Tirtha is the place where Brahmanical rites and observances are to be performed, and for a few, the Tirtha is the place where one leaves behind all desires and all rites and sets out for the far shore of moksha. Even those who have placed little value upon Brahmanical traditions of Tirtha Yatra have utilized the notion of the Tirtha to refer to internal crossings, and the Ganga, the Yamuna, Kashi have been given mystical locations in the subtle physiology of the body. Exactly. All these places exist in your body itself. The river, the crossing, and the far shore have formed an important symbolic complex in the Indian imaging of transition and transcendence. While the word employed in speaking of such passages may not, while the word employed in speaking of such passages may not always derive from the Tra root, the specific image of fording the river flood to the far shore remains a key image and is utilized in a variety of contexts. For example, the dead are said to cross the river Vaitarini to the world of Yama, or the sacrificer crosses to the world of heaven on the quote-unquote ships of sacrifice, or the seeker crosses on the raft of dharma to the far shore of nirvana. Samsara, the stream of life and death and life again, entails one crossing after another. Indeed, in one of the creation accounts of the Shatpat Brahman, no sooner has the creator, the Shatpata Brahmana, no sooner has the creator Prajapati no sooner has the creator Prajapati emerged from the primordial egg, Brahmanda, right? Primordial egg to begin laboring over creation, than he sees the far shore, the para of his own life. Quote, as one might see in the distance the opposite shore, end quote, of a river. The para, the far shore, may be simply the other, or the opposite shore, or alternate universe, alternate dimension. Whether that is the world of heaven or the realm of death beyond the Vaitarini. However, para also means the farthest limit or the fullest extent, the ultimate. To have crossed over to that shore is to have gone as far as one can go. Thus, for some, the far shore is not death nor heaven, but the land described as moksha or nirvana. In both the Advaita and Madhyamika schools of philosophy, Madhyamika, the class 10 board exam of West Bengal board schools are called Madhyamika. And the class 12 board exams are called Ucha Madhyamika. So that word has come from here. I did not know this. This is fun. In both the Advaita and the Madhyamika schools of philosophy, one sees from the perspective of the far shore beyond duality. Okay? The perspective of the far shore beyond duality. That it is not different from this shore. That far shore beyond duality, it is not different from this shore. That's where the paper ends. What a brilliant paper. This was a beautiful paper. Now let me check some comments. Here to Learn is saying, this is the line of Kal Bhairav Ashtakam. Yes. And the last paragraph is also so much fun. It gives you sort of a reassurance that Kala Bhairav Ashtakam Pathamtiye Manoharam Jnana Mukti Sadhanam Vichitra Punya Vardhanam. I think I missed up two lines there. I need to not try my hand at this. I'm not that comfortable with this as of yet. Vinigvanan Manogya Hema Kinkini Lasatkatim Kashika Puradhinatha Kala Bhairavam Bhaje. Yes. It is intriguing how so many cultures have their version of crossing the river, like Styx for the Greeks, Sanzu no Kawa for the Japanese, etc. Yes. And if you all have seen the movie Troy, you all have seen when Orlando Bloom's elder brother dies. I have forgotten the names of those real life characters. But his father goes to Troy, to Brad Pitt, to Achilles, and begs to leave his son's dead body to his father so that he can give two coins on his eyes as offerings to the boatman to take him to heaven. And Greek cultures also have the idea of the servant of Apollo, because remember Orlando Bloom and this king's this king who has just died, the elder brother we were talking about, their sister was the servant of Apollo in the temple of Apollo. So that's the equivalent of the Devdasi Pratha here. My Didi was in Madhyamik board. Hindi was very tough there. Yeah. Many of the pagan cultures have rivered between material and spiritual worlds. Yes. World serpent surrounding the world astray. Exactly. Dadi, your Sanskrit has improved tremendously. Thank you. Trying. Okay, then thanks for joining the live stream, guys. Today I'm a little too sleepy. Otherwise, I had another paper planned. We'll start from tomorrow. I think I'll do 2-3 papers unless too many suddenly music projects come about. I recently finished an 8-episode season 1 of a comedy series on the app called MX Player. After that, let's see what works come. Otherwise, I'm going to do, I think, at least 3 papers tomorrow. Hopefully, if all goes well. Thank you for joining the live stream, guys. Good night.